Hello everyone, welcome to the today's lecture on pre-employment testing as a part of a selection process. In this lecture, we would be discussing the different types of tests and evaluation mechanism that is available for assessing the candidate's potential to be a right candidate or a right person for a right job. So let's begin with the today's lecture. Broadly speaking, the major portions that we would be covering in this lecture includes the different types or categories of pre-employment testing, including starting with the psychological tests, knowledge test, performance tests, integrity tests, and then how the assessment centers can help us in conducting these tests, and the option of computer interactive test, though the list is not limited to these types of pre-employment tests, but the major lecture would be focused on these. However, there are certain other slides which would be covered and will be covering different types of options available other than these tests. The first and the most common type of a test that are conducted throughout the world, both in the private sector and as well as in the public sector of the manufacturing and services industry, is psychological test and its subcategories. This is by far the most frequently used test, as you all are aware of the aptitude tests that are conducted by the NTS and by the other testing agencies which are uh, conducting the pre-employment testing in Pakistan, and they all are mostly using the aptitude tests or a psychological tests. Why it is most used tool, it is because of the fact that it is considered to be the most effective measure of fit or match for the position as well as the organization. So we can say that mostly this type of a test or a psychological test are uh, better predictor of ensuring the person and organization fit as well as the person job fit. That is why it is most common throughout the world. Now, mostly when it comes to the testing part of it, so we often see the cognitive ability test or the aptitude test, also known as an aptitude test. This is most frequently used, followed by nowadays there is a growing tendency towards assessing the personality of the individual, so we often go for the personality assessment test as well. However, as far as the biographical data or the biographical tests are conducted, they are more often being assessed in the interviews in this part of the world, but we can convert it into the test part as well. Now we will look into one each and every one of them in detail. The first type of cognate is cognitive ability test, or also known as an aptitude test. It is more of the typical test that we see usually in our testing, employment testing, where they see how a person is learning, how efficient they are, how logical they are, what is their level of reasoning, or it comprises of reading comprehension, and it sees and try to identify the mental abilities and capabilities of the individual, because it is believed that the cognitive abilities or aptitude of a person may be a good predictor of a person performing on the job. So this is one of the most frequently used tests. There are different types of aptitude tests that can be conducted. For example, intelligence tests or mechanical aptitude test, where in a mechanical aptitude test they evaluate the capacities of a person with their visualization, their speed, and their knowledge of the mechanical matters. Psychomotor tests are also common in aptitude tests where they measure the abilities of a person that how they are able to perform their duties on operating any motor or equipment, their ability and their mind coordination of the candidates. And then the clerical aptitude tests are also part of it, where they see that a person has the capacity to work in the offices. It may be checking their spellings or their compositions or comprehensions or how they are copying things or their word measurement, etc. These tests are common in the cognitive ability or aptitude tests. The second most common test in the psychological tests is personality tests or personality assessment. Over the years, it has been observed that certain personalities prefer shows different types of traits, which ensures the success of the job or failure of the job. And there are different types of personalities which can be fit or suitable for different tasks. Therefore, the psychologists and the human resource experts have included personality tests in the current market for the pre-employment testing. They try to identify the different traits of the personality. They check their extrovertness and introvertness, their level of conscientiousness, openness to the new experience, and their optimism, how they can show different stress tolerance, their to check their emotional stability, their service orientation, agreeableness, and different mechanisms where they can identify that whether the employees are can take initiative, they can be they are risk takers or risk averse, and different composites related to the job to express themselves. So there are different types of tests that are readily available, and it can be found online. For example, MBTI, that is a Myers-Briggs test of personalities. There are 16 types of personalities. You can just search it or Google it, you will find it. And the next one is a Big Five model of personality. Then there are type A and type B personalities. You can easily find these tests and you can check them how they are working in the organizations or how what your personality is. It can be easily assessed. Okay, now the third one and least seen personality test is a biographical data instruments or the biographical test. This is very rare, and why we use it, it is particularly used to identify the candidate's different skill sets, which may be a teamwork skills, candidate leadership skills, their interpersonal skills, their creativity, and so on. But most oftenly, we do not see this in the tests. However, the people prefer for interviews, and in an interview, they can assess it quite easily because the candidate can express themselves quite relevantly and with ease and comfort. So these are the three psychological tests, or you can say the common psychological tests that are available for pre-employment testing. The second type of tests that are often conducted are called knowledge tests. Sometimes they are referred to as a job knowledge test or as a judgment test, and to some extent they are also called and known as achievement tests. These tests are conducted to see the fundamental or the basic knowledge and its applicability of the candidate, whether they possess the basic knowledge and they can express it or not, whether they have the command, whether they can do the things in practice or not. So the basic composite of it is to see the capabilities or the basic knowledge of the individual, whether they can perform this test or not. So it is stated or can be concluded that it is a predictor of the job performance, whether the person can actually perform the job by using this, whether they have the appropriate knowledge of the job or their area of expertise or not. So the questions are basically designed to assess the technical professional expertise or in the specific subject area. So these tests are mainly job knowledge tests where we check the person's ability, their knowledge. For example, you being the students of accounting and finance, you are appearing for a job, you applied for a post of accountant or a junior accountant, and over there they ask you questions related to uh, the basic accounting principles, different laws, for example, questions regarding to the bookkeeping or books of accounting, journal ledger, how they are cost of goods sold, taxation, how the LC, letter of credit, etc. works. So this is basically one type of test where they check that whether you possess the basic knowledge or not. Secondly, they may ask you or give you a work sample. Now, the work sample is something where they actually want to say that whatever you are saying or you are claiming that you have the knowledge, whether you can do it in actual situation or not. So, sort of a work sampling is also being given to the candidates to prove their knowledge and show that whether their knowledge they can do practice it or not. The third type of tests that are often conducted is called performance tests. Now, the performance tests are actually trying to measure the candidate's ability to perform certain essential tasks which are mentioned in their job description under the duties and responsibilities, whether they can perform those duties or tasks or not. For example, mostly this test is conducted on the positions which are actually uh, for the experienced positions or the people who are having certain experience in the organizations working on those positions previously. So the organization just wants to assure and confirm that whether the person can perform their type of job which they are claiming that they have done previously. So most of the time in the initial interview, when they see that the person is claiming that they have done XYZ duties and responsibilities in their previous job, and that is also a part of this job description as well. So what they do is that they a sort of a work sampling, or they give you an activities, or they give you different tasks to see whether you actually can perform your duties in the uh, proper workstations or not. So this is another method which is used in pre-employment testing. Integrity tests are basically designed as a part of the pre-employment testing to ensure that the companies avoid hiring dishonest employees, the people who can be unreliable or undisciplined people, or the people who has some sort of a criminal mindset, or the people who are very weak in this regard. So for that very purpose, the organizations can opt for conducting an integrity test. So some of the tests you already know, you people are familiar with the polygraphic test where they give certain sort of a questions to they ask questions from the candidate and check their response on the polygraph whether the person is telling a truth or lie. We also know it by the name of a lie detector. There can be some tests to check the person's honesty and their integrity. So this type of a test are common as well. Employers nowadays also prefer assessment centers to for their pre-employment testing. Basically, the assessment centers consist of standardized evaluation of behavior, which is based on multiple evaluations, including job-related simulations. They conduct interviews. They also go for the psychological test. These are basically some centers which is a combination of more than one objective of selection technique used to measure the suitability of a candidate for a job. It usually involves attending a venue along with other candidates for a day or a half a day, where these centers are used, try to use the combination of different types of tools of pre-employment, and they provide a wide range of holistic assessments of participants as a process that makes evaluation of the candidates potential for management on the basis of their different sources and techniques that we discussed earlier. So it's just a kind of a center where the candidate goes and they appear in front of the predetermined testing which has been designed by the organization or employer. They go there, multiple types of tests and interviews, assessments, work sampling, situations, group discussions are conducted, and they give a comprehensive report to the employer regarding the position of the candidates based on the criteria mentioned to them. Employers nowadays are also taking advantage of the computer and information technology. So, for that very purpose, they have developed a system of a computer-based testing, which is specialized in taking work sample tests, numerical ability tests, and reading comprehensive tests, clerical comparison and checking tests. Along with that, they also go for checking your typing speed test, or also checking how good you are with the technology. So basically, there is no different test in this type. But however, this is a recent technology where the organizations and the employers particularly take advantage of it because it is more effective and efficient to take these different types of pre-employment testing. So it is applicable in most of the organizations which have this capacity as well as capability to conduct a computer interactive test. These were the major types of performance pre-employment testing which are used throughout the world. However, along with that, let us summarize it and see in detail some of the descriptions or exhibit that has been extracted from the different books in the next slides. So it will also cover and give a summary of the different types of tests that we have covered in this lecture so far, and also give an insight about how the authors or the different writers, experts in HRM, are giving their opinions. Gary Dessler, a very renowned author in human resource management, claims that 60% of the organizations use some sort of employment test, and along with what we discussed in the previous slides, there are increasing trend in performance simulation tests. Along with that, work sampling trend has also been increased, whereas there is increasing test of using problem-based tests, a sort of a case studies, scenario-based test, or a problem-oriented test to check the capabilities and abilities of the candidates' potential employment test in the potential employment test. Along with that, there is also increasing trend in adopting group discussion of the candidates on a specific topic to see how they are going through, how they analyze the situation, how they can put up their logical reasoning, and different mechanisms. So these assessment tests or pre-employment tests are also gaining much popularity. This particular slide is an exhibit extracted from the book of Dan author, which is already available to you. Some of these tests we have already discussed in the previous slides. However, some of the remaining tests we will discuss over here. The first one, drug test. Drug test is basically to check the candidate for their drug abuseness, to see whether the candidates are drug addict or not. So for that, there are different types of options or tests available. You can go for this urine screening or a blood test, hair analysis test, or critical tracking, or checking your people reaction to the light. In all, this is just to ensure that the candidate who is the potential employee of the organization should not be a drug abuse. The reason for it is that it may create trouble within the organization. The person who is a drug addict or they show the signs of being used to a drug addiction, it may be bringing some negativity in the organization or overall work culture and their environment. And not only to the environment, but it may also create a substance abuse at workplace issues, which is not the what organization is looking forward for. The second type of a test we already have discussed in the previous slides is psychological test. So I'm skipping it. Personality tests are already discussed in the previous slides. Along with that, we have discussed the integrity tests, polygraphic tests, and the written honesty tests are already discussed. Physical testing, yes, this is a new one which we have not discussed in the previous slide. Physical tests are basically a sort of a test to ensure and check the person's physical abilities, because there are certain jobs which require you to be physically fit. For example, the jobs of class 4 employees or the people who are working on the operations in the production unit, they require you to be physically fit. So physical examination is necessary. It is also necessary for being in a law enforcing agency or other duties, as maybe, and you can take any example of it. So these are some of the tests which are also part of the pre-employment testing. So here in this slide, we are summarizing the whole discussion of this lecture. Now, if you see in this diagram, we have already discussed the need of a general aptitude tests, personality test, work sampling test has been discussed, mechanical aptitude tests are discussed, honesty tests are also conducted, and we have discussed it. We discussed the assessment center and its importance. Uh, Industrial skills test is also one of the tests which is important in the industries, which is designed to measure the applicant's skills and their aptitude towards their industrial duties. For example, for manufacturing, shipping, and distribution related tasks that they are going to perform in a specific industry. So every industry may choose different type of industrial skill test, keeping in view their nature of industry and their organizations. Then dexterity tests are also conducted. Dexterity tests are basically for the employees or the job position holders who work manually. By manually, I mean to say those who use their hands for a very particular or a very tiny jobs with a very small particles or with a very delicate components, and they make things. For example, take an example of a shop which is a wristwatch repairing shop. over there they use different small objects to repair your wristwatch. So the focus and the hand and finger combination and your eye combination is very important, and they just try to ensure that your hands are not shaky, they will not destroy the things. Or you can think of the computer repairing shops. Another example is an electronic shop where the employees use their hands, and their hands should be not shaky to ensure that they do things more appropriately. So to check it, we use dexterity tests. Then the knowledge test we have already discussed. A management skill test, that is also a part of your personality assessment to see your different type of skills: interpersonal communication, leadership skills, your managerial skills. It is discussed in the previous slides as well. The last clerical test to ensure that you are good in the clerical jobs, you know your things. For the class 4 and clerical positions, tests are conducted as well. So this slide was basically a conclusion of the overall discussion on the pre-employment testing. Now bear in mind that these are just an options available to each and every organization, to the HR people, and they should choose as per their need. It is not necessary they go for all of them. It is not necessary that they should omit all of them. But what we have to do and what we have to ensure is the validity and reliability of our selection process. So it is very important that you choose very wisely, carefully, and design your pre-employment testing. In fact, not only pre-employment testing, but your whole selection process as per the standard which give you appropriate results that you desire. That is the right person for the right job. So, after discussing this pre-employment testing and completion of the selection process, what is next? It is going to be discussed in the next slide. Once done with the whole process, we are now in the position to make a job offer. Job offer is an offer by the organization to the candidate who has shown potential and who has been considered among all the candidates to be the most suitable and desirable candidate. So the organization makes a job offer to that candidate. Now, in response to the job offer, the candidate can either accept or reject the job. In case the candidate accepts the job, so that person is going to reply with a job acceptance letter. Now, job acceptance letter, after the job acceptance letter, that may be treated as the arrival and joining report for the job. However, in certain scenario or situation where the person is busy somewhere else and he wants some time, so he will mention it in the job acceptance letter that I will arrive at the job or I will join the job on XYZ whatever date. Particularly for those candidates who are engaged in different organization, so they have to complete their notice period, which is usually of 1 month. So they will be able to join this organization or your organization after 1 month. So they will first send you a job acceptance letter. They will complete all the documentations and requirement. And once they are in a position to join your organization, and the day when they arrive as their first day at the job, they will have to give you an arrival report or a joining report, which is in the form of a letter as well. Now, this is the end of a selection process. Now, the candidate has become your employee. As an employee, you will have to give him some orientation or maybe required to give him certain training. This would be our next lecture on orientation and followed by a lecture on training, how to conduct a training for the new employees as well as for your existing employees. So far, this was the whole staffing as we have discussed it previously as well, that once the employee or the candidate become your employee, the selection process stops. Now, being the selection process as a one-time activity, the candidate has become an employee, and that is the end of a selection process. It is going to be followed by different activities on a regular basis and some of them on a rare basis or once a year basis. So we are going to discuss those activities in the later stages. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please do ask in the group so that we can elaborate and discuss further. Also, please check your LMS for the assignment and task related to this lecture. Thank you. Stay home, stay safe. God bless you all.